Hi everyone, my name is Millie, or I'm Riley Tegan on Wattpad.com, and I'm here to tell you how to get fans. And reads, I forgot to mention reads. Okay, personally, I'm sure some of us know about my story Relying on Ben and Jerry, and everyone's like, how did you get so many people to read it? Well, here's what I did. The first thing, if you're on Wattpad.com, which is the best site I've ever been on for things like this, for just getting personal opinions on your work, the first thing you should do is join the Share Your Story Club. And there are a lot of read for reads, which you might think is really stupid or whatever, but it's really beneficial. Like, that's all I used to get readers on Relying on Ben and Jerry. I just kept doing read for reads, and people would like it, and they would vote for it, and people would look and check it out when they saw it on their profile. So that's really the only way to get started, is you just have to keep reading people's things and having them read yours, and it'll happen. Right now I have over 100 fans, and I really don't know how that happened. I would love to tell you how, but to this day I am so surprised by it that I really can't. A growing trend I've noticed is that my finished stories suddenly get a boost in reads, and I understand that personally because I prefer reading completed stories. So when it's completed and you search for completed stories, people will still read it. So that will also help. So don't just think like, oh, I've gotten like 3,000 reads and I finished the story. How can that happen? Because you might end up with 5,000 by tomorrow. It's really all just a personal experience with it, because there are writers on this site such as Make an Offer and Kirsty 1000 and Natasha Preston, I think her last name is Natasha Preston, something like that. But they have millions of reads, and even they don't know how it happened. Jordan Lynn, for example, I followed her from Quizella to Wattpad. She has, like, in total, like 60 million reads, and they don't know how it happened. It's really just getting your idea out there and seeing what happens. It's not quite about your quality, although it really does help when you're grammatically correct and you use spell check. Like, that just helps because it's more appealing, but all you really have to do is just get your story out there, and people will decide if they're going to read it or not. Another way I would say to get popularity on your story is picking those genres that not a lot of people write for. For example, I specifically wrote my story, Toy Soldiers, just to cater to action, because I figured people would read it, and I like writing action, so I decided to just dedicate an entire story to it. And so far, right now, as I'm talking to you, it has 15,827 reads. If we're talking about Wattpad, it's safe to say that starting a story that's teen fiction is probably the best way to go. Either teen fiction, humor, or romance are the most popular genres. So if you want to write to the popular vote, that's the best way to go. Covers are also a really big reason that some people will check it out, because if your cover doesn't look that great, people really do judge a book by its cover, and they won't read it. So if you take time and you put a lot of thought into your cover and you make sure it's physically appealing to the eye, then they are definitely going to read it. Another thing that's going to help you get reads is the title, because if it's a title that's really catchy, then they're going to be like, oh, what's this about? Like, for example, I've heard from some people who read my story Relying on Ben and Jerry that they only read it at first because the title is so weird. Like, there is not another story on any site that's probably titled that way. But there might be 1,000 people who wrote a story called My Soulmate or something. There are a couple of different ways to write a story that people want to read, and one of them is very cliche, and the other is not cliche at all. So, I mean, you can write, like best friends with the hot school athlete, and we suddenly fall in love. Like, I mean, you can write that. People read it. I've probably read a couple of them if they're good, like, they have good prose, but a lot of people also do like things that don't meet to stereotype. So don't write about, like, One Direction or The Wanted if you want a lot of reads, because I promise you there is not that big of a market on One Direction and The Wanted fanfiction, especially not on Wattpad. What I really have to say is write what you want to write. Like, don't let me tell you what to write. If you want to write a One Direction fanfiction, though, although I don't recommend it, you can. You're still going to get views, and you might get more views than me. I don't know. It's unpredictable. Really, like, what people are going to read, you can't just know when you're going into it that if you write something on this subject, it's going to be a hit. Nobody knows. That's why you write things, because you want people to read it. You want something to read. You want them to read something new and something they've never read before, and that's why they're reading what you're writing. That's just the way it works. But honestly, I'm never going to read One Direction fanfiction. I hope that was at least somewhat of a help. If it wasn't, and I just sounded really pretentious and aloof and just like a total witch with a B, then you can feel free to just tell me that in the comments. I'm really not going to get offended. I know who I am. That's just the way it works. Okay, well, that's the end. I'm Millie, or Riley Tegan on Wattpad.com, and I want to wish everyone a happy National Novel Writing Month, and I'll see you guys in December. Make sure you tune in to this YouTube channel, Cal and Millie 2, for more writer-oriented videos.